Loud.
Okay.
And now I'm going to try to share my screen.
Okay.
But bam.
There you go.
All right.
Easy.
Hold on one
Right.
second. Hold on. Hold on. I got to find. There we go. Ooh. I'm on the wrong thing there. Ugh. Come on. Whoa. Hold on. Ah, there it is. Sorry, everybody. All right. So
Right. You good to go, Lane?
I'm good to go.
Okay. And
On
so
to
the
three.
third function is the system of white supremacy. What it does is socializes and hypnotizes people into their different roles based on cultural norms and behaviors that are rewarded and reprimanded. So it does this primarily through stereotypes and tropes. So it uses racial stereotypes and tropes to reinforce what people should and shouldn't feel, what people should and shouldn't experience. And if you behave the way you should behave, you're subtly rewarded. If you behave in the ways you shouldn't behave, then you're reprimanded. And these three functions, what they do is they actually strengthen the system. They make the system better at doing what it does. So the fourth point then is these first 3 points actually perpetuate the system itself and gives the system more power and more capacity for the first initial 3 points. So if we think about it, like if we think about the system of white supremacy as literally a system, because it is a system, those of us who might have dipped our toe into the huge field of systems theory, will be familiar with how systems interact with their external environment. And they do this because of a phenomenon called entropy. Now, entropy is a dynamic where systems have a tendency to move towards death and disorganization. So a system over time will actually make itself redundant and it'll die off. But in order to counteract entropy, systems need to import energy from the external environment. So for example, our body is a system. So it imports energy through air, through water, through food. Look at a pond. A pond in a marshland is a system, or an ecosystem specifically. And that pond imports energy through rainwater, through sunshine, which creates photosynthesis, which then creates the algae, which starts as a food chain. An organization is a system. And it imports energy through revenue, through sales, through hiring staff, through intellectual property. So if you look at white supremacy as a system, how does that system sustain itself? It imports energy. And in the case of white supremacy, it imports energy primarily through the dynamics of inequity. There's a transfer of energy. I can make energy in a second. No, in this case, from white folks to Black, Indigenous, and people of color. And that inequity of energy is what sustains white supremacy. If we want to really address white supremacy at its roots, a great place to start is addressing inequity. Now, inequity can be measured in objective measures. For example, life expectancy, health outcomes, rate of home ownership, rates of incarceration, rates of mental health challenges and suicide. But it can also be measured in our subjective experiences. For example, the inequity around our experience of security, the inequity of belonging, the inequity of validation, the inequity of safety. All of these inequities represent a transfer of energy, you know, from the marginalized group to the privileged group. And that transfer of energy is what sustains the system itself. And that creates a vicious cycle, which Lane's going to talk about more now. Over to you, Lane.
Wow, I really appreciated how you broke down the systems and the entropy and stuff. I've never heard you talk about systems in that detail. It was really interesting to hear you talk about those different kinds of systems and related to the system of systemic white supremacy. Yeah,
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 we say systemic racism because it's a system. And the moment we see it as a personal thing or we minimize the system component, the system wins. Because the system makes us think it's a personal thing playing out. It's between people. And that's obviously true, but the system has to be addressed at the systemic level. Thanks, Lane.
wow, really appreciating what you're saying there. By the way, everybody, uh, if it sounds, Errol's obviously got put a lot of thought into this stuff, and he's actually writing a book that we forgot to mention. Errol, why don't you say the title of the book that you're writing?
The working title is The Anti-Racist Organization, a practical guide to building a connected, inclusive, and high-performance culture. So it's about supporting organizations to see work around racism, sexism, homophobia, gender issues, classism, all our diversity challenges in society, to see that as a performance driver. How do they get better at doing their core business, whatever that business is, by creating more inclusive cultures? Thanks for the plug, Lane.
Yeah, yeah. And the first couple of times you said driver, I didn't understand because of your accent. Yeah, it drives performance. I think. Yeah,
An enabler of performance.
yeah. Hmm.
That's my funny Australian accent. Sorry,
Yeah.
folks.
No, no. I just want to make sure people understand you because you're spitting wisdom here. Yeah. All right. Um. So yeah. So Errol mentioned about the vicious cycle of white supremacy, and yeah. So let's talk about that. So a vicious cycle is a cycle that feeds itself, right? And there's a complexity about me talking about this as a white man, right? Because there's so much that I don't know about white supremacy because of my own, as Errol said, we're all hypnotized into our own ways that we should be thinking, and so I've got my own blinders on no matter, and so there's so much I don't know about white supremacy, so many nuances that I don't even know that I don't know. And at the same time, it's important that in any that that with white supremacy, it's important that white people speak up about it and agitate for change also, instead of black and indigenous and people of color always doing that. So yeah, so here I go. Here we go. So let's start this cycle with the foundational belief that white people are superior and that their dominant position in society and in the world is natural and correct. And then this is expressed, as Errol said, through structural discrimination. So there's laws and structural advantages for white people and disadvantages for black people, indigenous people, people of color. For instance, in the US, there's a lot of examples to choose from, right? The GI Bill was a law that sent a generation of World War II veterans to colleges and universities around the United States if they were white. And uh, FHA loans, Federal Housing Authority loans, were given out for people to buy homes if they were white. And the government and banks created color coded maps that kept black people in the ghettos and allowed white people to buy houses in the suburbs and the so called desirable areas of cities. Toxic waste dumps and polluting industries were and are located in the areas where black and indigenous and people of color are. Houses owned by white people then increased their value over the years, contributing to this huge wealth gap that we have right now, where the median wealth of white households is 10 times greater than the median wealth of black households. Or somebody near where I live in the Bay Area in California, if you try to sell a house and you're a black family, you get a really low ball uh, assessment of the value of your house. So you can only sell it for a little bit, for much lower than it should be valued. And we know that because sometimes black families who get this low ball assessment then ask their white friends to come in, and they take down all the pictures of black people, and they take down all the anything that might look like black people might have come there at one point, and they put up their white pictures there, and then they invite the people in to like assess their homes, and they get double the value, right? So again, there's these are aspects of structural discrimination. And it's not just in the US. In Australia, from 1869 to 1970, the government was removing Australian Aboriginal children from their families and communities, supposedly for their own protection. And these children were forced into residential schools, just like in Canada with the First Nations people, and these schools were specifically designed to denigrate and erase Aboriginal Australian culture and identity. And there was also a white Australian policy until 1973 that said that nobody could migrate to Australia unless they had white skin and were from Europe. And Errol's family migrated after that policy was finally taken off the books. So anyway, so that's the structural discriminations aspect of this cycle. And this seeps inside. People are socialized by the family, by school, by movies, by the TV, by books, by the news on TV, to see whiteness and white people as normal and correct. And black people and indigenous people and people of color are overrepresented on the news as criminals, and white people are overrepresented as victims, even though the data shows that white people commit just as many crimes. And then on TV, when you watch TV and, let's invite this expert to tell us what we should be thinking about these politics. And they're mostly white. And then black people are very underrepresented there. So in this way, white people internalize superiority and dominance. And they but I'm saying they about white people as a class, but we consciously or unconsciously think and feel that they're normal and better and that they deserve their dominant place in society and in the world. And they're socialized to either not notice black and brown folks, or to see them as dangerous and inferior and pathological. And then the next part of the vicious cycle is that what stews inside leaks out. When white people internalize dominance and supremacy, we intentionally or unintentionally express this. And this happens in interactions with black, indigenous, and people of color. And it results in microaggressions, or as Ibram X. Kendi calls it, racist abuse. So, for instance, some examples of that: touching a black woman's hair, or making policies that people can't go to school or work with certain hairdos, or mispronouncing people's names, or telling a black or Latinx doctor, go clean my loved one's hospital room, assuming that they're the person who's cleaning the hospital, not the head doctor, or assuming that uh, a Latinx person is the valet when actually he's waiting to go into the fancy restaurant that's right there. And then 50% of medical students who were surveyed believe untrue myths created in the 1800s by slave owning doctors, that black people have thicker skin or fewer nerve endings. These are medical students. And then researchers found that these unfounded and false beliefs contribute to doctors offering and prescribing pain medicine to black patients at a much lower rate than to white patients, because black folks are thought to possess a higher threshold for injury or pain. And then other research shows that black consumers of mental health services are diagnosed with psychotic disorders 3 to 4 times more often than white consumers. And this is true no matter where they live in the world, right? So these are all the ways that 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 stuff that had seeped inside of white supremacy leaks out. And then what that does is that creates worse outcomes. When internalized white supremacy leaks out, it's not only harmful to the folks who it's leaking out on, but it also intensifies racial inequities. And now this part is hard to talk about, and it's going to be hard to listen to. And I'm going to share a few statistics here, but these are not just cold facts, right? They're facts about how real black people and brown people are impacted every day. So please take care of yourself and breathe and hold yourself, or step away if you need to. Some facts here. So research has found that the stress of racism leads to chronic low-grade inflammation that puts black people at risk for heart disease, sleep problems, asthma. And this kind of low-grade inflammation, combined with the inequitable access to health care, contributes to inequitable health outcomes, including a lower life expectancy for black people. I'm talking about black people now in general. More specifically, Racial Justice Collaborative is more focused on black folks. So all these things are about black folks here. Racial bias was discovered in the federal government's formula for distributing COVID-19 aid to hospitals. Creates bad outcomes. 2 times the amount of white people, black people died at a rate 2 times that of white people in the first year of the pandemic, and it's still 1.5 times greater. So other I mentioned black people being diagnosed with psychotic disorders at a higher rate, 4 times higher. Other research found that black youth who should get a diagnosis of attention attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, and who would get a diagnosis of ADHD if they were white are often given diagnoses instead of disruptive behavior disorders like oppositional defiant disorder and conduct disorder. And even small children aren't spared from this bullshit. Sorry, I just got to say it like it is. An eye scan study showed that preschool teachers watching videos of preschool classrooms looked for and found so called challenging behavior in black children, even though there was no challenging behavior in the video. They were just, the researchers just like were just filming a regular classroom with no challenging behavior, but they found it anyway. And so this kind of internalized and leaky white supremacy leads to black kids being 3.6 times more likely to be suspended from preschool. Suspended from preschool? I never even knew that was a thing. Shows my white bubble. And black British women are 4 times more likely to be detained under mental health legislation compared to white British women. So, what Toni Morrison calls the white gaze influences who is diagnosed with psychosis or disruptive behavior disorders, who's suspended from preschool. It impacts how teachers view older black kids, which lead to more suspensions and involvement of law enforcement that are euphemistically called high school resource officers. And this supports the school to prison pipeline, which contributes to huge racial disparities in incarceration and tears black families apart, makes it hard for previously incarcerated black folks to get jobs, and contributes to the already immense racial wealth gap. And there's so much more that we could share about that, but we're mindful of trying not to traumatize you, although that already was heavy enough. So these bad outcomes perpetuate the stereotypes and perpetuate the dominant narrative that black people are inferior, criminal, or dangerous, crazy, that props up the foundational belief in white supremacy and dominance, which in turn justifies, normalizes, and reinforces the structural discrimination, and the cycle perpetuates itself. The snake bites its own tail with devastating consequences. And we could have started this cycle anywhere. So I came up with this idea of the vicious cycle when I was writing that chapter for Ken Hardy's book. And you may have noticed that although this vicious cycle describes systemic oppression in a different way than the 4 functions of systemic oppression that Errol was writing about, and although we came up with these ideas independently when we were each doing our own research and writing, these 2 frameworks map onto each other pretty closely. Yeah. Let's just pause there for a minute. Yeah.
Thanks, Lane, for sharing that. That's such like an intense thing to see and hear and feel. We'd love to hear people's thoughts, reactions, feelings to what Lane just went through. Such a intense thing to like sit with. I'm wondering what's in the silence in the group. Is it like just people are feeling? Is it like a little bit of shock off what Lane just went through?
Yeah, Francine, thank you. I appreciate your question. Francine said on chat that um, you are concerned with the feelings of the audience. Lane, how are you feeling around this? And my body is shaking. There's like little tremors like all through my body. My solar plexus is contracted like this. I feel kind of a burning in my diaphragm, and I have tears in my eyes, and my face is kind of hot. And I just feel so a combination of grief, sadness, fury, and then I have this kind of weird polarization between hopelessness and staunch commitment. Thanks for asking.
Thanks, Lane.
Miss Annie, I see your mute went off. It's always wonderful to hear from you.
I was going to ask if we were free to comment at this
Please,
point.
please.
When you mentioned there are things that you even you don't know that you don't know. Uh, it, uh, it is very real to me, because even people who are trying to understand and trying to work on the problem many times will make comments or judgments and not really understand the full impact that it has on a person who is not in the same position as you are. But one of the examples that I heard very loud and clear, I forget which one of you mentioned that sometimes doctors think Black people have thicker skins, or that our pain threshold is higher. It is without the knowledge or consideration for the fact that we grew up in a culture where we were not allowed to complain. If we had pain, we had to hide it, or like they say, suck it up and deal with it. and of course, when women have often had to endure pain because they were seeing, especially in terms of doctors, was white men who could not relate to the kind of pain that she was having, and so some of this becomes complicated and generalized.
So appreciating what you're saying, Ms. Cooper, and I that's something that I hadn't considered, and I'm really taking that in. Thank you.
Thank you.
Annie, we haven't met before. It's so nice to meet you. Thank you for saying what you did. And what you said impacts me so deeply, what you said and the way you said it. And I wonder if it's like there's not an insight there for many of us in this moment on what Annie's talking about. Is how do we hold in the pain in this moment in reaction to what Lane was talking about? How do we be conditioned to not allow our own pain and reactions
Really
to
appreciating. Yeah. So go on. Sorry.
the horrific and painful statistics and vicious cycle that Lane went through? So maybe it's just a moment. Let's take 15, 20 seconds just to like take Annie's teaching really seriously in this moment and to be mindful of where in this moment we could be holding back on our own pain. Out of conditioning of not showing it. Thank you so much, Annie. Thanks, everyone.
Before we, I thank you. I so appreciate what you just did there, Errol, and I see, Francine, that you put something in the chat, and um, I'm going to read that out if that's okay. But first, I just want to mention that what you already said, Francine, um, that that I was concerned with the feelings of the audience, but how am I feeling? And it makes me just remember how often black people and brown people are asked to talk about their pain, and white people are just sitting there, and that's another layer of this. So, and Francine, is that okay if I read out? Well, it's right there in the chat for everybody. So I'm just going to read that out. Thank you, thank you. Francine said, "I feel dysregulated by the onslaught of lies that I have to struggle to regulate, and an assignment that can never be completed, and my self-love that I am burning my energy to protect and to bring to safety, to help it grow as large and tall as any tree might grow, that does not have to meet so much resistance. I have to walk my soul back into my heart every day."
Wow. Thank you, Francine.
Sundiata says knee deep. Powerful, especially when read aloud. Yeah, that sounds like poetry, and that sounds like spoken word to me.
There are two hands up.
Yeah, I I am a poet. I could tell that. I want to read your poetry. Put in the chat where we can get a hold of your poetry, Francine. I I I hear and feel it. And thank you, Miss Annie. I just really wanted to highlight to uplift what Francine was writing before we moved on to a couple of people, especially because a couple of people are white folks. All right, Mr. Tom, good to see you again.
Thank you, Lane. Good to see you as well. Good to be here. I won't speak a lot, but you saw my post there. And first of all, let me offer to Francine. Francine, of course, I put it in the chat there. You know, your sentiment is so eloquently put, and I resonate so deeply with it, and I empathize with you so fully. But for you to use the image of a tree is so fantastic, dear. Some of my best friends are trees, literally. And so I offered to you Psalm 1, verse 1 and 2. And I believe that will comfort you. It comforts me. So, Lane, what I put in there, you know, everybody was sort of dumbstruck, right? And you were concerned about their feelings, and I appreciate that. And I don't mean to be overly, you know, comfortable, so to speak. I live in Milwaukee. Milwaukee, the city of Milwaukee has the second highest incarceration rate in the country. Wisconsin, the state of Wisconsin, has the highest incarceration rate in the country. So I know what you're speaking of when you talk about the school to prison pipeline, about police, over policing and all of that. My friends talk about how often they're stopped. Yes, I get it. Yes, I get it. But Lane, here we are. Margaret Mead said, right? What can we do? And I understand that it's easy to feel hopeless, and it's even worse to feel helpless. And so my voice is about, let's not be overwhelmed by the trauma that we might think we're taking on when Black people are suffering all over this country. Let's just, you know, buck up and say, look, what can I do? I'm really emphatic here. What can I do? Now, I have white supremacists coming on my property and doing what they can to intimidate me. But it's not going to work. Okay. And the last thing I'm going to say is we can pray. Now, I just spent the last 4 hours in a Native American prayer sweat lodge. So, yeah, I'm really charged up, and I'm really clean of all kinds of crap that would block me from loving whoever. So I am an activist, and I do everything I can, and I stand up, and I stood up against the white folks, and oh yeah, they didn't quite like that. See, now they come after me, but so what, right? But I do what I can to serve in the Black community and my friends. That I love my friends. They love me. We love each other. It's just what we have to do. We have to find ways to create, you know, you just have to ask somebody, what can I do for you? You know, that's the answer. Let's put our heads together, right? Let's put our heads together and say, let's all meet again next week. And everybody come back and say, this is what I did this is what I did this week to help out the cause. Whether it's taking on a white person or someone in your
Tom, can I jump in? I love what you're saying. Do me a favor. Ask me the question you want to ask.
Ask you the question?
You just said, ask a question. What can I do for you? Ask me that question right now.
What can I do for you?
Great. What you can do, if you're willing in this moment, is to move 2 steps away from the buck up mentality
They.
I don't mean that to black
Towards-
people. I'm not saying that to black people.
What was the one fighting the giant in the Bible? What was
No,
his name?
I'm saying that
Hang
to
on, Tom.
white people. I'm saying that to white people. I'm not saying to any black person. I would never say that to a black person. Please forgive me if I created the wrong impression. I'm saying that to white folks. White folks need to buck up and stand up for injustice against all people who are oppressed.
Okay.
That I apologize. I do never mean that any black people should buck up. No. I empathize with you to the nth degree. I apologize.
Tom,
I'm listening.
well, I'm just thinking that it's more about the system. Not what can I do for you, but what can I do to help change our oppressive system? You know, I think that's the beauty of what we've just been watching is the systemic, it's a beautiful way you've organized it, Errol and Lane, the vicious cycle that becomes embedded in all of our consciousness, but especially in white consciousness, this assumption of superiority. And it turns into supremacy structurally. And that's what I think we should all be thinking about is what actions can I take today to change the structures? Not just what can I do for you? Because to me, that's not really the level at where the problem is at. I mean, we can all love many people, but it's what are we doing about these structures?
Well, the answer is simply Malcolm X said, Malcolm X is one of my heroes, and Malcolm X plainly said that white folks' role in this fight is to take on other white folks. So that's why I said, talk to someone in your family and find out if they're on the same page as you about knowing the fact that black people are oppressed, because there's a lot of white people who say, oh no, there's no problem. Oh no, there's no problem.
Okay,
First-
well, let's open it back up to everyone. I just wanted to make that comment. Thank you, Tom. Thanks. And thank
Thanks.
you, everyone.
Thanks, Nancy, and and appreciating that. Yeah, what are we gonna do? And the reason we paused there was we're actually not done with the stuff we wanted to present. Errol's going to present some other stuff. We wanted to pause there because it was such brutal stuff that was being spoken about, and we wanted to give people a chance to talk about their feelings about it. And then we're going to have a chance later after Errol is finished talking about the things that he wanted to share. We're going to have a chance to have more of an interaction and an open forum about this stuff. So anybody else have a feeling about what happened before we move on, or what was shared? Did you have a feeling or a body response? Or, and I also hear DL, I saw what you said. How does little me David fight the giant with many heads? Systemic racism. That is a great question, and in the open forum part, that's a great question to address also. Anybody want to share first before Errol goes on about any feeling or body response? Sundiata. We're not seeing your face, my friend. There we go.
Do you see me?
Yeah.
I don't see me, but anyway, that's cool. For the most part, I'm thinking that with the feeling, I think me and you talked about this, Lane, the emotional effect that these things, knowing these facts, the more facts that you know, the angrier you get. But the problem with anger is understanding what it does. You know, what it does to the physical body, what it does to the psychology. We use anger as I think, in my opinion, we should be using those kinds of feelings that we get in progressive action as opposed to just being mad. Because see, the thing is, when you're not living it every day, when you find out about it, you're pissed. But when you're living it every day, it's like you know about it. You never really get numb to it. But if you stay in that state of anger, extreme anger all the time, you'll kill yourself. And that's why you're seeing those statistics of us dying from hypertension and all these things, because there's so much pressure. So we have to figure out a way to balance all of that. And, you know, I'm glad to see when other people find out about it and get mad and want to do something. Great. Because I've been mad a long time. So right now, I think, you know, that's how I feel. You know, that's the only thing that I would add to this conversation.
Thanks, Sundiata.
Thanks, Sundiata. And we just finish those last few slides offline. What do you think? We're already onto it. I think there are notes. I can see notes as well there, Lane.
You can? I can't.
Anybody else see the notes? Just me. Yeah. We've got
Yeah, I
our
can see them.
Lane,
Google
you have to
Docs,
make
sorry.
your slides full screen.
we've got the
Oh,
Google Docs.
oh, I did a problem. I did a problem. No, I just need to do this as this, not my desktop.
Yep,
Is this better?
There, that's
much.
better.
Sorry.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Lane. Just jump to the next slide if you can, Lane. So Lane spoke about this in how those attitudes kind of seep into our system. And so one of the keys to understanding white supremacy is understanding how it impacts our own psychology, our own beliefs, values, and attitudes. This is because over time, we tend to internalize the messages that society sends us. Sends us about our value, our worth, and our place in the racial hierarchy. And these also manifest as biases that are both conscious and unconscious. So one way it plays out is internalized oppression. And this is when the way our external oppressor or the oppressive system views, values, and treats us becomes the way we view, value, and treat ourselves. Some of you may have heard of Howard Thurman. Let's go back, keep going back one lane.
Sorry.
Some of you may have heard of Howard Thurman, so the American theologian and author. He said, if we are despised long enough, we eventually despise ourselves. And I think that captures really powerfully and poignantly the dynamic where we internalize the views of our worth, of the system we're existing in. Thanks, Lane. And then there's internalized dominance, where the members of the dominant group are conditioned to see their positions as natural and earned, and then to internalize that they are more deserving of the resources of society. Thanks, Lane. And then as a result, the dominant group members are affirmed and made visible and represented in positive and diverse ways. So Lane spoke about how Black folks are overrepresented as criminals, like on the television news. There was a case in Australia end of last year where a young girl was kidnapped. Her name was Cleo Smith, if you want to Google that, I think. And when they found out the kidnapper, he happened to be an Indigenous man. And the TV news showed footage of him being arrested. And the news report said he was wearing a black t-shirt. Now, when it's a TV news commenting what the person was wearing, but they can't say he was a black man. Let's say he was wearing a black t-shirt. So subliminally, all of us receive the message, black equals kidnapper. This is the ways that how we're conditioned and represented in the media, news, social media, perpetuates this cycle of white supremacy. And we internalize those beliefs. Thanks, Lane. One more. So to transform white supremacy, it requires us to work at both the systemic and collective level, as well as the personal level. So for those of us who are facilitators, coaches, and therapists, it's really clearly framing and kind of referring to which level we're working at in each moment. And knowing that those two levels are intimately connected. There's a cause and effect between those two levels. But most of us tend to work at the personal level, and we minimize the impact of how the system is playing out in any moment. Thanks, Lane. And so here's the real head trip of this. Like, the dynamics of structural discrimination are impersonal. It's a system. It's not going to say, Lane, we're going to make you feel this. Diane, make you feel this. Carol, make you feel this. Errol, make you feel this. It's a system. It's impersonal. But the impact on us is so very personal, irrespective of our race. Thanks, Lane. And so while these two levels of work, the structural or the collective and then the personal, need to be framed separately, we can't underestimate the interrelated and causal nature between structural racism and then internalized oppression and internalized dominance. So I find myself like quite frequently saying, it's really about normalizing people's experience. Because the system, especially for Black and brown folks, makes us feel like there's something wrong with us. So I'm often find myself saying, of course you're going to feel angry. Of course you're going to feel paranoid. Of course you're going to feel exhausted. Of course you're going to feel hopeless. Of course you're going to feel depressed. Anything else wouldn't be normal, given the system we're existing in. Because the system says, you're messed up, I'm going to swear, you're fucked up, there's something wrong with you, you're pathological, you're crazy. So much of our work is about normalizing and supporting and validating people's experience. Thanks, Lane. And so the last slide is like, every time we work to free ourselves of where we've internalized oppression, of where we internalized dominance, you know, we transform the culture we live in. If we believe that our internal world reflects our outer world and our outer world reflects our internal world, sometimes all we can do, given the oppressive system we're functioning in, is to free ourselves of our internalized oppression or domination. And then I believe, which you might not, which is fine, that ripples out into the cosmos, into the universe. And that's how we can change, the culture we live in from our own internal work and our internal psychology. Thanks, Lane. Thanks, everyone.
Can I ask you a question, Errol?
Yeah, please.
My guess is, but so I just want to check. are you saying that's the way we can do it? And then you said from our own internal thing, but are you saying or not saying that that's the way to do it rather than the outer change? Are you saying that both are needed?
Oh, both are, thank you for clarifying, both are needed. But in order to like, I just think to sustain the external work, to don't burn ourselves out. I think as Sundiata was saying, the exhaustion, the anger, that's not sustainable for our bodies. Freeing ourselves up internally makes the external work more sustainable, I think. What do you think, Lane?
I totally agree with you. Yeah, it just reminds me of something that I'm going to find a quote. Let maybe some people want to talk about that. I'm going to find a quote. I'll get back to you.
Yeah, I saw also DL gave me a thumbs up. I'd love to hear your perspective, DL, on what I just said, given if you feel like sharing, giving your thumbs up. And then Diane had hand up as well. Maybe DL didn't want to share, which is fine. Okay.
Yeah,
Diane, you had your hand up.
I'll share
Oh,
if that's
yeah, please.
okay. Thank you
Thanks.
so
Thanks.
much. No, I appreciate
Thank you, DL.
everything that I've heard thus far. Yeah, I guess I'll just call myself who I am. As a Gen Xer, I mean, I've just seen a lot, Midwestern girl. There's just a lot of work being a Black person. And so when I love what you said at the top of this session, or at least when I joined, sorry, that's Kobe in the background,
Hi,
that
Colby.
that one way to free yourself, particularly as it relates to people that have extra melanin, because that's all it is, biologically speaking. But one way to free yourself is to know that it is not you individually, and to know that you are operating in a specific in the system. And I love what you said is when you personalize it, white supremacy actually is the victor. And so it's a constant challenge, though, day in and day out, to be mindful of the fact that we are living, even if you're white, in this systemic, oppressive, racist structure. And that's just what it is. But I think it's particularly difficult for those that have this extra melanin to, it's very exhausting to walk that out, left foot, right foot. And so you have to constantly remind yourself that, hey, it is not you. Whether it's in a corporate setting, personal setting, whatever the case might be. So I appreciate that. And I'll just land right there. I did just kept, sending emojis, but you're right. You have to remember that, because otherwise you will go crazy. So thank you.
Yes. Thanks, DL. I just love what you're saying, DL. And I just think one of the challenges is, how do we not take it personally, like you're saying? But the tricky thing is then to balance that with not decentralizing our experience, because the system also invalidates our experience. So by minimizing our experience, we're colluding with the system. So I love what you're saying. I believe it's true, just so true. And that's a personal part where we have to believe in our own experience. If that's the fatigue, the rage, the hopelessness, the depression, that's an important part of it too. So I just thank you for sharing, DL. I really appreciate it.
And do you mind if I just have a final comment? Because
Please.
I love I love some of the thoughts that you just shared, because it reminds me of something that I literally just experienced today, Saturday
Great.
afternoon.
Please share.
I get I actually have, like, they're not even, they're Gen Zs, right? So I have an 18-year-old that just graduated, and I have a 21-year-old. Well, both of my kids are, our kids are in college, but they're already getting opportunities. Oftentimes these opportunities are coming from not just some random, no, these are coming from opportunities through either my husband's network or my network. But guess what they share? And guess what I also know? You have to comply. You have to play the game, quote unquote. And so both of my kids wear braids, and that just happens to be the trend thing. But because they have zero skills and just a lot of going to school, I have to have that conversation. I have to literally have that conversation with my kids today and say, well, Garrison, guess what you got to do, buddy? All that hair, you got to cut that. So those are the types of decisions, and that's our lived experience that frankly, white people don't have that. Now, don't get me wrong. I understand that, like, if you're in a military setting, there are certain things that you have to comply with, but this is our lived experience, military or just everyday, whatever. And so I'll just land right there. But it's like, and what do I have? I got to literally tell my kids, hey, buddy, you got to cut that down. So just a little humor too for the room. So
Thanks, DL. Francine, I saw you had your hand up.
Oh, excuse me. I didn't know I could
Oh,
undo anything here. Not sure why I'm not seeing. I wanted to say I work with people through a nonprofit that essentially lose their identity in the struggle. Can you speak to what it came to me was you can't get the natural ways you get your identity from your family, from your community. So a lot of just a lot of what I'm hearing, it was like sort of like we can do it by ourselves kind of thing. And not that that was the intention, but could you speak to like how do you create a kinship with the community to get your identity back? Because I personally had to call a friend one day and say, I think I lost my identity. Can you tell me one thing that you like about me? When I was
wow.
finally stripped of the falsehood of, the indoctrination to white supremacy.
Great
And my
question.
friend was a white Jewish lady, by the way. So it wasn't about black or white. It was about someone that I felt knew me or knew my faults and my good points, and that I felt that her opinion would be honest enough.
Have you got a thought to your own question, Francine? I'm not sure. I can't get a good answer
Well,
for you.
where's the we in this of getting your identity back, of that inner outer, you know, uh, validating your experiences? Because I don't believe you can do that by yourself. I think it has to happen in community as the
Yeah.
natural path. So where is the we in that healing process?
I think
Yeah.
I agree. We need people sometimes to validate our experience. And I think if I look at white supremacy holistically, then there are three, in my view, equally important, like you thought, like levels of how we work with it. One is our personal work, our individual work, freeing ourselves of our conditioning. Then the second level is what you're talking about, Francine, the community and relationship part. Having friends who love us, who can hold us through our experience and validate our experience. That's equally important. And the third level is expressing it, is addressing it at the systemic level through systemic change, particularly around inequity. I think, given how well entrenched white supremacy is in our culture, it requires a really holistic, like multiple ways of approaching it to address it. Answer your question, Francine.
Yes, in part, I just wanted to add that the sick,
Please.
twisted nature of racism is that we've all been affected by it. And that same friend, when I woke up, we parted at some point because my being woke and her not being woke was not sustainable. And that was very sad.
Wow. Yeah.
And she was a
Thanks, Brad.
narcissist, by the way. So it doesn't mean that your friend has to be perfect. You know, somehow there's something, you know, that's beyond all of this that can come through even the most hateful person.
Yeah. Thanks, Francine. Diane, you got your hand up.
Before you do, Diane, could I just jump in there for a
Yes,
second?
go ahead.
Francine, I'm really appreciating what you said there, and it makes me reflect that one of the key pillars of white supremacy is this idea of individualism, and we can do it all on our own, and that what we do, that was from our own work, and we don't, so this idea of community and this idea of support is, and of course that's not true for all white people, but um, is often something that is not lifted up in white spaces, and from what I've heard and learned from teachers and friends, uh, is that in non-European cultures, that's definitely more of the norm. Is right, the sense, I am me because we are we, and just that sense of, and I probably quoted that wrong, so sorry about that. Um, but anyway, I just wanted to mention that yeah. Go on, Diane.
Well, thank you, Lane. I'm going to lower my hand. I'm still going to talk. So I'm only going to speak for myself. So I'm not speaking for Black America or Black anybody. I'm just going to, I'll speak for myself. I'll say what I believe about a lot of Black people and white people. So I'm having a hard time. So let me say, how do I feel? I'm feeling a lot of pressure in my chest. And that's because this is turning into a place where white people get to come and listen to the Black people who have all of these horrible, like we feel bad and we don't, and all of that. That's not why I'm here. And that's not why I feel an urgency. I've been involved for a long time, and I've been involved long enough to learn how to get my needs met, whatever those needs are, if they're going to be met. But what I see and what I've been seeing for a long time, and what I don't hear is, it's like when somebody said, I think it was you, Earl, you said, the system is made up of people. So yes, we're talking about systemic white supremacy and systemic racism, but all along the system are these people that are in all of these positions doing everything. So the system isn't just operating on its own. It has a lot of momentum. People have a lot of energy behind them to do things in a certain way. There's a lot of code words. You can hear it all the time. It's not a secret, but the system is made up of people. That's one point. But the more important point that I want to make, as I've studied the history, the Black history in the United States, and I'm beginning to look at colonization, global colonization, and looking at kind of remedies for that, reparations, global reparations, clearly. But what I have a problem with, when I look at pictures of Ruby Bridges. Ruby Bridges was a little girl you've all seen, or you've seen pictures of young Black woman, she was a child, going to school. I think it was Little Rock or somewhere. She was walking to school, and there's this whole crowd of white people behind her, and they are demonic, and they're sending, they want to, it feels like they want to tear her apart. Why? Because she's Black and she wants to go to school with white people. And so I'm starting to wonder, all those white people, it's like looking at a lynching. I'm just tired of seeing the burned bodies and, the cutting up of people, taking out bones, giving them out, taking pictures with burned corpses, and seeing, what do I see? Yes, of course I see the atrocity of what white people have done to Black people to frighten them for forever. But I look at the white people and I see the ancestors of all of you, white people. I see white ancestors and I say, what about them? Now, it has certainly affected me and all people, Black people, to be targeted. But how do you target? How do you take your children and show them? How do you right now send out, do these white supremacist message? How do you go on these marches and your children are there and they're watching? What messages have gone out to white people and what are they suffering? And the reason I'm wondering that, as I look at things like climate change, and I look at the recent, Roe v. Wade went down, and you see wave after wave of white women, and they don't say white women, but really you see white women. And why is that? That's because of this, because white women stand with white men, and that's what we see. So they're suffering and they're sick. This is a sickness. White supremacy is a poison. And I may be affected by it, but I'm not poisoned by the belief in it. I'm not poisoned by my ancestors and what my historically they have done and still doing. So I say to white people, it's about you. It's about what you're teaching your children. You don't want schools to teach Black history. Why is that? So let's take the focus. We know what happens to Black people, but the converse is happening to white people. They're being sickened and poisoned and dying, and they need us to work along with them. And we can't do it because of the racial divide. So that's what my concern is. We're not looking at what has happened to white people's humanity, their spirit, their soul. What Lane said in the thing that I read, he helps white people stay resilient, but he's passionate about expelling the poison from his mind and heart. And how come white people aren't just pouring in to talk about that? How do you expel the poison? How do you get your own people together and expel their poison from their humanity? is just crushed. Why aren't you looking at that? That's my question.
You're on mute, Lane.
What makes you think we aren't looking at that, Diane?
Because-
Before we go into that, just one second, Diane. I just want to say our intent for the rest of our time together is to have an open forum so that participants, so that we all can hear, express, understand, and feel how this vicious cycle and the functions of white supremacy impact everyone's lives, and how white supremacy plays out and gets perpetuated, not just historically, yes, historically, and also in our lives in the moment. And so the stuff that Diane's talking about is right on point also. And an open forum is a space where people can share and listen and express and interact about ideas and feelings and actions and experiences that might not feel okay always to or safe to express in daily lives or in workspaces. And so in this way, we can deepen our understanding of what we're talking about and support one another and create community and action. And so now's the time we want to hear from you. So go on. Just wanted to make official what was already happening.
Thanks, Lane, framing that.
So go on, Debbie.
I know, I just have a question. Diane put a very, very, very strong accusation on the table. And I don't know what grounds, with regard to the white people in this space, I don't know what grounds her accusation.
Well, maybe you could speak personally. What, instead of asking a question, maybe you could,
I could speak personally, but I'd like an answer to my question.
Okay.
I don't have any interest in answering any questions. I put out what I feel. Now, if you feel something, say that. I'm not here to answer.
I'll let someone else talk.
Why, Debbie?
Because let me be careful about this. I have an amazing amount of respect for Diane. I've been in other workshops with her. I think for two reasons. One is that, yes, Diane, I heard you put out how you feel, but you ended it with a very specific question. Why are you not doing this? That's not, I don't hear that as how you feel. I hear that as a question with an accusation in it. So the fact that you would ask a question like that and not be interested in expounding what you meant by it is disturbing to me. And the other thing that makes me not want to talk personally right now is, and again, I want to be careful. I really understand, I think I understand why Errol and Lane spent so much time grounding us in the existence and details of white supremacy. And yet, to me, that's work I've been doing for years. It's things I know well. To me, it's repetitive. One of the problems I see with this kind of workshop and process is that the white people who come to it are often not the white people who, we all need it, but not the people who need it the most. And I don't, right in this moment, feel like this is a group in which I want to reveal myself, because I feel like a lot of assumptions have been made about me that may or may not be fair and may or may not be true. And I'm sure there are other people, there are enough white people in this space that I don't have to be the one who does the speaking.
God almighty, Debbie, I'm gonna just jump in here. Debbie, look, you're personalizing what she said. You're taking it personal. And that's not what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to hear them and hear their thoughts and hold them gently and lovingly and not take them personally as an attack. That's my perception of what you're doing. It's not, that's not for us to do that. So please, I hope you understand what I'm saying. You want other white folks to talk. Well, I'm talking right now to say, look, that's not the way we hold Black people's pain. We don't
I understand what you're
personalize
saying.
an accusation.
Tom, I understand what you're saying. You're telling me what I should feel and what I should do.
Not at all. I'm saying what you should do, but not what you should feel. You can feel offended, but you have no right to object to what she's saying. Our job is to hold the pain, whether she's talking from pain or desperation or whatever she's talking from. Our job is to hold that feeling and let her say what she has to say and not object. We can converse intellectually, but you're taking it personal. I'm just going to let you know that. You're taking it personal. That's not what we do. Thank you.
I just want to come back to you, Tom. When you say like hold their pain, there might be a reaction that says, I don't need white folks to hold my pain on the Black side. Like you're assuming a bunch of stuff, and it's actually patronizing to think that I need you to hold my pain.
No, it's not patronizing at all.
I'm telling you,
called compassion. Maybe you don't like my words. Maybe you don't like my words. Okay. I understand you don't like my words, but my point is we don't object to the way someone puts out their message to us. Maybe you don't like my words about that. If you don't want me to hold your pain, I won't hold your pain, but I can be empathetic. And if you don't want to hear that I'm empathetic, that's okay. I'm good with that. I can change my words for you. I can change my words for you. I'm not trying to say that I'm somehow better than you. I'm trying to say to Diane that we're not supposed to object in the way she's objecting.
Tom, I have one question for you. Tom, I have one question for you. Are you interested in the response and feedback from Black, brown folks from your words?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
And I changed my words when I heard you object to them.
Okay. So you might want to just like, given you said, yes, thank you for that. I saw a few people nodding their heads and Diane gave me a thumbs up. Maybe somebody else wants to speak from that side. That there's something a little bit patronizing about, you know.
Okay, Tom, I have a request. Sometimes when you speak, you say them and then you say we. And I find that very disturbing. I would like you to just talk about people, not we and them.
Thanks, Nancy.
So, Tom, I heard you say to Debbie that when Black and brown people speak, we should listen to them and not object to what they said. I heard you say that. And then Errol said, when you say whatever it was that he was talking about, when you say that, I feel patronized. The first thing you did was object to what he said and say, that is not true. I am not patronizing you. I heard you. We can go back and do the recording. I just want you to take that in.
But I did change my words. I did
change. But you said, you didn't go back and say, oh, you say I was patronizing you. Maybe I was. How was I? I didn't understand how I was. You objected to it, and then later you changed your words about something else. So are you interested in how Errol or maybe other Black and brown folks may have felt patronized by what you said?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for that clarity. I truly appreciate it, Lane. Thank you.
Errol, maybe since you said it, maybe you could just say it.
Or somebody else can. I saw Diane gave me a thumbs up. Maybe somebody else can speak. I saw a few nodding heads.
I'm sorry. This is Dr. Richardson. Is it okay for me to interject at this point?
Please, Dr. Richardson.
Thank you. First, I want to say I appreciate you holding my pain. I think that that's part of the problem. people who are not Black and brown do not understand our pain. So I personally accept that you want to hold my pain, and I find it to be comforting and genuine and sincere. I find it to be all but patronizing. We just had a very demonstrative example after Diane had made her comment that the young lady said, I'm gonna give somebody else a chance to talk because she did not give her a response. I don't know names. I'm sorry. I'm sitting in my car. You don't really get to say, I'm gonna skip over you because you're not saying what you should be saying or what I want to hear you saying. I'm gonna let somebody else talk. That's the problem. Because I heard her loud and clear. I had to pull this car over off the highway because everything she said resonated with me. And then I hear this young man come to her defense and be scolded and defined as patronizing because he sympathizes. In fact, his word was, I empathize. I can empathize with you. He most certainly can. But I want him to hold my pain as I would want anyone else that is not Black and brown, that has been in my shoes, that has lived the life that I've lived as a Black woman, that has faced the things that I've faced. How else are you going to be able to help me if you don't know my story, you don't know my pain, you don't know my struggle? So I need you to hold my pain, Tom. And I need you to help other people understand that that is an act of compassion, not an act of patronizing. It opened up my ears fluidly when you said that because people lack compassion for other Black and brown people when we talk about systemic racism, when we talk about white supremacy. People say all the time, get over it. I didn't do it. Maybe the people I'm related to 50 years, 30, 100, 150 years ago did it, but I didn't do it. And that may be true, but I need you to understand why it's important for me right now, for you to understand why I feel the way I feel, why I say the things that I say. And so I understand, I see a comment that comments shouldn't be taken personal. And that's true. But this is a personal problem. That's the issue. It's not a global problem. Globally, nobody cares. Nationally, nobody cares. It's personal. And you have to use that emotion and be able to understand why it is personal. And I do understand you shouldn't take things personally. But I would like to know how you can make a statement like that and put my ancestor in your face and tell them, don't take your slavery personal. Don't take this rape personal. Don't take this lynching personal. It's very personal. And we got to stop ignoring that it's personal. That's the problem. That's where the rage and the anger comes from. We're getting ignored by how we feel, and the things that we verbalize get ignored. And that's exactly what just happened. So that's what I wanted to say. I want to thank you for holding my pain. And I want to encourage other people who are not Black and brown to hold my pain, to talk to somebody who understands what they're going through, and ask them, how does this feel? What can I say to help you? What can I do? My overall resolution, this entire system has to be dismantled and disrupted in every facet, starting in the justice system, even in the legal system, even in the hospitality system. Every entity is contaminated with hatred. And so the rules have to change. And in order to do that, our systems have to come down, and they got to be rebuilt with contributions from everybody of every race, from every color, every nation, every language. Everybody has to contribute because this is our big melting pot. We're responsible for how we treat each other. We are held accountable for that. And so we can't make the progress in a system that continuously upgrades hatred. They continually put things in place to obstruct the Black and brown people. We can't keep walking around that. We got to take it down. I don't know how to do that. I appreciate this forum. I appreciate all of the attendees. I appreciate all the dialogue because this is a starting point, and it is so powerful and it is so necessary. And so that's all I had to say. And I thank you all for any comments you have to say. I appreciate it. I acknowledge it and I respect it. But I thank you most time for holding my pain. That's all I got to say.
Thank you, Dr. Christine. My point is, empathy means we don't be offended by what someone says. They need to get it out of their system. If you look in the chat, you'll see I've talked about doing restorative justice circles, trauma-informed restorative justice circles. That's what's going to help the situation. That's the end of what I'm going to say. You want to know more, you can ask me. But Dr. Christine, thank you so much for understanding where I'm coming from.
Thank you, Dr. Richardson.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
I just want to mention also that Black folks are not a monolith, not homogenous. Brown folks are not, right? Not everybody has the same point of views about everything. So I'm really appreciating what you're saying, and really feeling you and with you, Dr. Richardson, about what you're saying about the need for that empathy from white folks, the need for us holding your pain. I really hear that.
Thanks.
And I also just want to mention that Errol and maybe others may have had a different experience, and part of an open forum is hearing those differences also. Yeah, go on, Errol.
Notice Brianna's had their hand up for a while, so maybe give Brianna a chance to speak.
Thank you. I'm really appreciating the honesty here and the caring. I'm taking it all in. And why I'm here is I've known Lane for many, many years, even though I haven't seen you, Lane, in many, many years. And since George Floyd's murder and in the aftermath of that, and because I have very, very dear, almost family in my life who are people of color and their children and their grandchildren, I immersed myself as much as I could to learn as much as I could in many courses and forums and books for a while. And I took all kinds of action, and then I found it faded away, and I went back to my privileged life. And my heart still wakes up every morning scared for these young men and what could happen to them on their way to school, on their way to college. I mean, one of them's about to start a promising career in college if some cop doesn't pull him over, right? So here I am. My heart could not have more depth of caring. And yet I'm up against my internal, God knows, some combination of internalized privilege, my own psychological crap, my good girl conditioning, not wanting to rock the boat, fear of taking up too much space by speaking if I'm in a group where traditionally white people have done too much speaking. And it's complex and it's paradoxical, and that's where I trust people like Lane to hold those paradoxes and to speak to them. And that's why I came here, because I want to learn how to get off my ass without sinking into all the shame and guilt and self-loathing and the poisoning guilt and shame about what white people have done. I mean, that's real. I don't want to sink into white fragility and self-centering around it. And yet I have to address some of that poisoning that's in my system in order to keep functioning. Because what I did was I could only sustain it for a while, and then I went back to my safe white life. And I don't want to keep doing that. And that's why I'm here.
Thanks, Brianna. Can I ask you a question, Brianna? Is that okay, Brianna, if I ask you a question?
Yes, yes.
If all those things you mentioned, your own privilege, you mentioned your own psychological crap, you don't want to take up space, your self-loathing you mentioned, if all of those were less about your own personal psychology, but were about the system of white supremacy playing out through you, how might that play out? How is the system of white supremacy manifesting in all those things you just described in your own personal psychology? It's a complex question, I know.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's a really good question. Um, I mean, for me, it's hard to separate out the white supremacy from the whole patriarchy piece, also, right? Because
Great, good work,
they're all mixed together.
good work.
Um, but I think, regardless of the origins of these things, I think having these conversations where we put it out, the cards out on the table and say, this is what's going on. Um, this is what calling it out, this is what's happening. And you guys
Yeah,
just did that also in teasing apart the interactions that are even happening tonight. It makes it more visible, and to me that visibility makes me feel less alone in it, and
right.
then that makes it easier to believe that there is a we that can do something about this, because
That's
otherwise
fa
it's too
that's
isolating.
fabulous. Let me ask one more question, push my luck if I may, Brianna, with you. How does white supremacy contribute to your loss of motivation since George Floyd till now?
Every possible way. I mean,
Can you give me one example if you
in
can.
my day-to-day life, the murder of black people doesn't affect me. In my day-to-day, I mean, it, to the extent that I really take it in, does it hurt my soul and my heart? Yes. But I have a million distractions. I have a million other things to focus on. I have a million other problems I can focus on. It's very easy for me to forget about this, because when I walk around or I drive or I do my daily life, I'm not at risk. That's white supremacy. That's white
That's right.
privilege. It's
And
not
if you
going
were to
to
just,
it's not going to deny me a mortgage. It's not going to deny me a job.
that's
So it's
great.
easy for
Thanks,
me to put it on
Brianna.
a back burner.
So if just for 15 seconds, you put it on the front burner and let it fully go into you without the distractions you mentioned. Just do it now if you could for us for 15 seconds and see what, if anything, changes in how you feel about that.
It's what
Thanks,
got me here.
Brianna.
It's what got me here tonight. It makes me desperate to learn. It makes
Okay.
me desperate to hear from the people who know more than I do how to go about this, because I do what I know to do with my friends and with the people who are in my circle, but this is a much bigger problem, and I don't know more to do than what I'm doing in my personal life with people. And I mean,
Thanks,
yes, it
Brianna.
has to do with voting. Yes, it has to do with getting laws changed. Yes, it has to do with all of those things. And I try to do as much of that as I can too, being active politically. But um, it's not enough. It's just not enough. And
Thanks,
thank you
Brianna.
for pushing me to that.
Good work, Brianna. Thank you for sharing. Thanks for being open to being pushed a little bit.
Can I just frame something about what you said, Brianna? Uh, uh, First of all, I heard you speaking to Diane's question. How is this in me? How does this implicate me, really? And and then I also heard you speaking to what I think it was Francine who said, was that Francine? About we, right? We can't do this just me. We need each other. We need community. to be able to wake us up to who we are and remind us really what's important. And then it made me think of, who is we when we're white folks? Is it our white friends and our white family? Or are black folks and brown folks included in who the we is? Because then it does impact me, because that's us. Sundiata.
Can you see me and hear me?
Yeah.
Yep. Loud and clear.
Okay, yeah, it's interesting conversation we're having today. So naturally, I like to go back to what Diane was talking about, which is the self, building oneself. Seems like that's a slight debate right here. Like there is this thing about getting yourself together, and then there's the thing about being one with the community and working with, a more communal sense of things. But from the culture I come from, I self-law and master. That's what ripples into your community, is how you are dealing with your own personal things. So for instance, like the young lady was talking about, she said that certain things affected her in herself, but then she had all these obstacles as far as what to do, and different fears that she was dealing with. She was real about that. So that's where that self thing comes back in, because ultimately she's going to have to decide within herself what she's willing to do, what she's willing to accept. And the other thing that it seemed like there was this thing where there was a difference in how people felt about Diane's question to everyone. And that's, I think, was an interesting volley right there, because I think what Tom said, although maybe the words might have been taken a certain way, but what he was saying was, when people who are being kicked are telling you how they feel about it, one of the best ways to grow is to listen and try to internalize on some level what they're saying. So I kind of agree with Dr. Richardson on that. Holding somebody's pain, or like what you said, I don't need anybody to hold my pain. I agree with you on that. But on the same tip, if they feel like to try to feel something will help them to find their humanity, then by all means, do what you got to do. Just know that most time it's going to be sympathy as opposed to empathy. Because empathy means you went through it. I mean, but if you can see that somebody's being mistreated, and even though you don't have the exact experience and you know what's wrong, you can sympathize with that person and feel something for them. And I think that is important. So I think everybody had a good point, but I do say that if we're going to grow, we can't take certain things personal. And to speak about personal meaning, when Diane said something, that was a question for everybody to search within themselves and come up with the answers for yourself. And if it didn't apply to you, like they say in my neighborhood, if you throw a brick, only a hit dog will holler. So if it's not you, then that's not who she was talking to. I think we all need to think about what she was saying, and then we can work with other people who may be on that side. So if you don't see it that way, then you can help somebody to understand what may be a better way to look at things. That's the only way we're going to grow.
You're on mute, Errol.
I just said thanks to the Ata. I like what you're saying.
Diane has her hand up.
Thank you, Tom. This is really, now I feel better. I feel better because now we're really having a talk. We're talking, but we're not talking about the core. Before I say that, I want to say, Dr. Christine, thank you You made everything so smooth and easy to understand, and I appreciate that. Also looking around, but one of the things, what was it? Her name is Brianna, I think.
Brianna, yeah.
Yeah, that's the core of what I'm talking about. What I'm trying to say to people to get it into your consciousness, into your awareness, is have fear for, have empathy for, be afraid for white people, white people, because obviously I'm not hearing an outpouring of recognition of the damage that these things that happened. When I look at lynchings, that's not my father, that's not my brother, but I feel it. So when you look at the young girl smiling, and you look at all these pictures that came out of, guess where I was today at a barbecue. How do you think that affects white people? Why do you think this is still going on? Because white people don't want to know this. They don't want to look at it. And so when I look at the history, I have to get into that history and see what it means and see what I can make out of it, and go and form groups and see who will come and talk to Black people. Well, that's the same thing white people have to do for your own self, for your own survival, for your own humanity. And look at what the universe is doing. We've got a climate change, and who feels like they're not affected? A lot of white people and a whole lot of other people of color, and the global South, they're affected. This is going to happen to you. And why can't we work on things together to solve some things? Because you won't not just look at, figure it out, talk to other white people just like me. I work at this 24/7. I don't put it on the back burner. And I've done that for years. So I'm encouraging white people to become afraid and aware and think about what happens when you burn up and you flood out like Pakistan. And then you're going to want people to take what's going on with you seriously, but we can't do it because of the racial divide. And why? Because you're not looking, if you won't even look at what you're doing to yourself and how you haven't cleaned this up, not for me, but for you. If you don't do it for your own children and your grandchildren, why do I expect that you're going to do it for me? Do it for yourself. We're all one human family. So, but get together with other white people 24/7. Don't wait for somebody to sacrifice themselves again like George Floyd. Don't wait for that. Pick it up. Get involved. Do things for yourself.
Diane, what you're saying is so important. I'm hearing such a strong wake-up call in what you're saying. And I just want to unpack that a step further if we can. And I think Brianna just touched on this. If I'm one of those white people you were speaking to directly, I might say, I have no urgency. I can sit there in relative comfort and relative privilege, and my house is on a big hill, so the water can rise, I won't get flooded out. Or I can buy a new house in a higher area, a more affluent area. So I'm hearing your words, but actually, I still have the privilege and the comfort of my white privilege lifestyle. And your words, I can hear them, I can hear the passion in them, but they still aren't waking me up, because my privilege and comfort insulates me from what you're saying. And In fact, to really hear what you're saying would mean me getting uncomfortable. And actually, I feel pretty comfortable right now. And my comfort actually, again, insulates me from what you're saying. Gives me a really beautiful buffer. Come back at me, Diane.
There it is. There it is, Errol. That is the problem. But we have tons of white people, well-meaning, want to do something, want to figure it out, and don't come to one more of these things. Talk. You don't have to talk to your friends on your when you go for your holiday and your family. Listen to what they're saying. You know the code words just like I do. Start there. Start. You don't have to go out and change the world immediately. Start with your husband. Start with your wife, your partner. Listen to your grandmother. Listen to your family. Don't save me. Save yourself.
Here's my challenge, Diane. Everything you're saying requires me to basically let go of my comfort, and I don't want to do that.
Well, then all I can say is that I hope the universe is hearing it loud and clear. Loud and clear. No, that's what I hear. And that's what I hear white people say. And I'm going to believe it. And I'm going to speak. I'm the universe. I've been this universe before. I'm the universe. And I say, I hear you. And I can send floods, and I can send fire and rain, and I can send all of that. And as long as it doesn't touch you personally, you don't care. You don't care enough to get out of your comfort. You don't care. I hear that. I will fix that for you. I will fix it.
That's great, Diane.
I
didn't mean
I
to cut you off.
imagine. Go on, Sundiata. Sorry.
No, I'm sorry. I was just saying that the other point that people can think about is this: poverty leads to crime, right? So, how many more crime bills can be made? How many people can be locked up before that crime comes into your community? It's coming, and it's not like it's not there anyway. It's just being hidden, and they don't put it in the news how much crime goes on in the white community. But wait until it's so desperate where people are figured out, well, I can't get any more out of this community. Let me go next door. You see, that's when, the phone calls to the cops is going to start coming in, and then we're going to see how people really feel about racism without looking at the economics behind it, without looking at the history behind these things. These things will all come to pass. Like, everything is a circle. So if we understand that as a principle, then what Diane's saying should go further with many people to say, I have to do something because this is going to affect me. Or if it doesn't affect me, it's going to affect my children or their children. You know what I mean? And when we start talking, I don't like to go into the foul parts of where this thing can go. But we're already dealing with some of the bottom parts of this barrel. So for others to come on down here and catch it too, it's not going to make a big difference to those people who are already catching it. So, we should work together. You know what I mean? This vicious cycle, Malcolm talked about it. And the way that he said it was that, they make the vicious cycle where they sell your cards and then lock you up for using them. They sell your dice and lock you up when they catch you, using them. It's the the school to prison pipeline is real because I was in the school system over 20 years. I saw how it goes, and it's very real. It's by design. And so all of these things, they're always going to affect us, but we live here. We're the indigenous people from here, and all of that stuff is going to spill to anyone else, whether they're a foreigner, a occupying force, or someone who thinks they're an American.
Wow.
And let
Thank
me just agree with Sundiata, and let me take it out of climate change, and let's look at the opioid addiction. So that's hitting your children. That's the homeless people on the streets in Boston. They're your people. And because you didn't do anything, you didn't care when it was in the Black community. So these things in all different ways, you've got to work with your own people.
Wow.
So one thing that I think I'm hearing in what you're saying, Diane, and I really appreciate what you said, Sundiata, and that interaction with Diane and Errol. And one thing I think I'm hearing in what you're saying, one aspect is on the outside, it's like nature is coming for you, the opioid addiction is coming for your kids. So that's like the outer things that can happen. But I think I'm also hearing you say that white people are damaged by white supremacy. The very fact that white people don't care is the damage also to our humanity. That's what I'm hearing implicit in what you're saying. And I also saw Antoine said, does this vicious cycle of white supremacy affect white people? Can I get a white person to answer this, please? And Heike, I have seen your hand up for a long time, and so please.
Thank you, everyone. Just want to start by saying it is difficult for me to speak. My heart's pounding and I've been swallowing hard, and I think that's partly because of the space taking that Brianna mentioned, and it's also because of afraid of saying the wrong thing and getting into trouble. And then I'm also heartened by what Dr. Richardson was saying. Thank you for all your comments. And I'm also, like I think Brianna said, this is the way to learn. So here I am, I'm going to do my best. I really hear, Diane, your question and your point, like, how's it hurting us? And as I came into this, I was going, oh, am I doing enough? I'm here, but am I doing enough? What am I doing? And yes, I am working with my people to some extent when it comes up. I'm not maybe an activist, but what I realize is what I am doing is I'm working on my own feelings, and I'm working not denying my own feelings, and I'm working on bringing them in. So I had an incident a little while, I had a couple of incidents where I was with a group of 10 people and they did something where I got upset, happened a couple of times. And instead of just denying my upsetness and being okay with it, I showed it, I felt it, and I let them know that I was upset with them rather than making it all okay. So in one instance, they were late. They said they were going to come for a certain time. It's sort of nothing in the big scheme of things, but they were late. I was getting cold. I was sick. And I held them down to not honoring their agreement with me and showed them that I was upset. And then later, I found myself crying so much about it. And I go, why am I crying so much about this? And I realized it was for that moment, but all those other moments where I hadn't shown my upsetness or hadn't felt my upsetness or whatever. And there's all of this coming through that one moment, and I'm getting red, feeling like it's such a nothingness, but it feels really important in this discussion because that is in a very subtle way me doing my work as well. I'm getting so red about this. And a very privileged but subtle way, working on me bringing in my own upsetness and feeling it and showing it. And later, a lot of the white folk, they were all white folk, appreciated me for holding them down and for showing my upsetness and not just minimizing it. And likewise with community, noticing how I need more people around me now, not trying to do everything by myself. So as we're speaking, I'm going, Heike, you're doing a lot of these things anyway, even if it's not. Like, and maybe that's also important. I think that's what I'm trying to say, that there's a subtle way of doing some of this work as well. But I guess my point and my redness, I think, is because it just feels so minimal. It feels so small in the big scheme of things, but it felt important to speak. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you, Heike. I think what you're saying is so, so important in
Thanks,
terms
Errol.
of, oh, take your time.
Thank you for saying that, Errol.
I'm holding your
Hang
pain.
on, Tom. Hang on, Tom. Hang on,
It's-
Tom. Tom, hang on, please.
And it's so hard because I have this voice, you're taking up space. You have no right, to have the pain, but actually that's the point that Anne's also making. It is actually important.
I was going to say, you're doing the very thing you spoke about in the moment, honoring your own feelings.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I trust in and I believe in your tears. So if your tears could speak, would your tears say to us, to the group, to the whole system you're talking about? Take your time, Heike.
Errol, your support means so much to me. Even, just thank you for saying take my time, because I feel the pressure to not take time. It's funny, I think the tears are actually the support, Errol, that you keep giving me. Something around that support and the saying it's okay. Like you just said what you said as best you could. It may not have been. There's something about support.
Yeah. Wow.
About support, yeah.
Can I give you a hand, Heike? Is that okay?
Mm-hmm.
My words are supportive because there's a voice around. We would say a ghost role in process work, something that's hanging around us that's so unsupportive of your feelings.
Right.
That says you shouldn't feel, you shouldn't take up space, you shouldn't speak, hence the pounding heart and the red face you're experiencing.
Yeah, and that was, I guess, what was happening. I was in this group where I just said, no, I'm not going to deny this. I'm not going to pretend it's okay. I'm not going to pretend it didn't happen.
That's so great.
And it had an impact on me. And I'm not going to help you guys feel better. I'm not going to say it was nothing. So somehow that seems important yeah.
And I think what you modeled beautifully is when we give into that voice that says, don't feel, don't speak about this. That's what Diane's speaking to, the numbing out of our humanity. That's what Sundiata spoke about, the numbing out of our humanity.
Yeah.
And if it starts off just by your feelings because people were late, that thawing out of our feelings has to, at some point in time, I'm not saying you collectively, mean we feel the impacts of these systems of oppression, if that's white supremacy or sexism or homophobia, all those things we're all grappling with. It's amazing how what felt so minimal support impacted you so much because of how strong that voice that says don't feel, don't speak about it.
Yeah, and in this setting, because I mean that's what I was saying I was doing. So I am doing that more, but to do that in this setting and get the support in this setting. Thank you, Errol. Yeah, for everything.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Thank you so
to
much.
everyone, the space, the hearing.
Thank you.
Lane, do you want to say something? I'm just looking at you for some
Yeah.
reason around.
Yeah. Thank you. That was so important what the two of you just did there. Thank you, Heike. It just reminds me of what I was talking about earlier, that supposedly black people have thicker skin and don't feel. But actually, I think it's white people who are conditioned to have thicker skin and not feel our own pain and other people's pain. That's an aspect of white supremacy, and like I think you said, Heike, also patriarchy, or someone said patriarchy. Yeah,
Brianna said patriarchy.
Brianna, and 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 we white people, to Diane's point, need to support each other to feel. Otherwise, we won't be able to feel our own pain about white supremacy. We won't be able to, what you did, rock the boat with your group of friends. We need to be able to rock the boat, but we can only do that if we feel it, that something's wrong. And also, we won't be able to do what Tom did, is to feel the pain of black people and indigenous people and people of color, and to hold that. And I saw something that Tom wrote in the chat. I just want to lift that up. Me holding your pain, or holding somebody's pain, means also something like seeing and appreciating the energy and the power, the strength that you have to do every day in order to survive that. I'm not using your words, Tom, but that's the basic idea of that. So I just wanted to frame all that. Yeah.
Holding someone's pain means I honor you and the extent of your strength to manage the oppression. It's about honor.
Yeah.
Honor. Ask yourself who you honor.
Yeah. Thank you, Tom. Carol.
Thanks, Tom.
Whew. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for all these voices. There's a couple things I want to address. Someone was asking how white supremacy hurts white people. And I wanted to say something to Diane, and I wanted to stand in for a particular voice that I'll name. Maybe I'll start with that voice. I want to stand in for the voice that might be connected to what Debbie was talking about or questioning way back, which was, so as someone myself who's been doing a lot of anti-racism work for a long time, and this is not about what Debbie said, this is more about in the moment that I'm at. I feel like it's the foundation of a lot of what I do in life. And I'm going to stand in for the voice, maybe that Brianna was talking to her. At the moment, I got exhausted and I have a hidden disability, and I decided to use my privilege to step back and do self-care for a while. And I'm also aware that I have that privilege to do that. And even though I'm aware, I'm holding consciousness about what's going on in the world, and I'm scared and I'm angry. And as a white person, white supremacy hurts me in so many ways. And one in specific, it keeps me separate from BIPOC people. It keeps me separate from what we can share. It keeps me separate from understanding myself and my own unconscious racism and how I may be hurting and harming people in a given moment, unless they call me in. There are many, there's lists and lists of things that how white racism hurts me.
So at the moment, I just want to stand in for my own self-care, even as I know the world is collapsing because of a white supremacist and patriarchal version of capitalism and how it impacts everybody, and particularly BIPOC people. And then secondly, or maybe that's speaking to you too, Diane, I want you to know, and I don't personally feel defensive about it. I want you to know that, yes, I am hurting. I am enraged. I am scared. I also feel a lot. And I am working in the world. And sometimes it doesn't ever feel enough. And I also want to speak to this thing around in spaces, in mixed race spaces. I also feel it's not okay in a big way to take up space and to express my feelings, because I am in part in a place where I feel like this is a place where white people need to be in affinity groups to sort out and listen to each other's stuff without impacting BIPOC people. And so I've done that a lot. And that's what in some ways is hard to be in a mixed race space, because it's my learning about that is that I don't, in terms of what you, Errol, were just doing with, who are you doing that with? Somebody.
Okay.
Yeah. It's, you know, yeah, white people have taken up so much space, and so it doesn't feel okay a lot of the time to take up space, and or to take support away from BIPOC people to BIPOC people. And I'm in a lot of circles where.
Carol, can I just jump in? You just had a feeling 30 seconds ago, and you can just push past it. I don't want to skip over that.
Yeah, I'm not.
I know
okay.
you don't want to take up space, but like,
Yeah.
I want to also give you feeling space. That's so important.
Feeling space. So you're differentiating feeling space from the
Well,
way.
I'm saying you said you don't want to take up space, but I want to give your feelings the space they deserve, and that's important.
I have a lot of feelings. I do share a lot of feelings. And the feelings that are coming up are about, like, it's not okay to take up space in a multiracial situation.
Right.
That's what the feelings are about, because I have, as a white person, we have as white people taken up so much space.
Yeah.
So I do share feelings with friends who are BIPOC, who I trust on some level, understand where I am in this arc of what's going on in the world, but I don't feel okay.
Yeah.
Even with my feelings, Errol, I
Thanks,
don't.
Carol.
Yeah.
Can I try to frame something probably clumsily? Is that okay, Carol?
Please do.
For all us like facilitator, therapist, coach types, and do a clumsy frame. I love your thoughts, this Lane. When Heike was speaking, I felt, this is my perception only, could be wrong, the atmosphere in the group changed. Something shifted. And the feeling she shared kind of deepened my experience of something. And as a group, we moved so fast away from that space and started talking about stuff as opposed to feeling stuff. And I think that's like the collective spot we all get stuck in. that's where the self-care comes in, that Carol's talking about. And then the process kind of recycles, and Carol now has a feeling that Carol feels this voice where it goes, you shouldn't feel, and to depersonalize that, it's not about Hiker or Carol or the group. It's how the system takes us away from the feeling spots and our humanity and all that. Because through the feelings, we can feel the pain, we can take action, we can feel the suffering, feel the connection. But if we move too fast away from it, then the humanity gets missed and it recycles. So it's like a collective spot we all get stuck in. We would say edge in process work. That Lane, help me out. I'm kind of halfway
Yeah,
through a frame.
I another way of framing it is, I heard you say, Carol, white supremacy, one of the ways white supremacy hurts me is it keeps me away from BIPOC.
Mhm.
And then this whole thing about, I don't want to take up space, so I don't want to share my feelings in this mixed group. And so there's a bit of a bind that we white people find ourselves in.
Mhm.
Because on the one hand, we get the message, you talk too much, and it's true. And you talk about your feelings too much, and it's true.
Mhm.
On the other hand, if we don't share our feelings about what's going on, then the black folks, the brown folks, the indigenous folks are expressing their feelings about it, and we're on the sidelines not showing that we're feeling anything. And that is also hurtful. And so when you were speaking, Dr. Richardson said, this is really heartfelt. She was right with you, what you were saying. And yet there's that the right thing would be to not share it. But is that really the right thing? There isn't a right way. There isn't a wrong way. You're going to do it one way. You're going to get criticized. You're going to do it another way. You're going to get criticized. But show up as who you are. And that's how we're going to do this together. If it's your feelings, but it's not just your feelings about you. It's your feelings about white supremacy and the impacts of it. It's this hurts me too, and I see it hurts you.
That's great.
So can I come back with a voice?
Please.
Yeah.
So there have been many voices that have come back to me from Black and brown people that I really heard. I really heard them. And moments it was, oh, you white people, you're going to cry. You're gonna take up more space with your feelings. And I agree with them. And so the bind you're talking about, Lane, is so real in me anyway. And I see it in a lot of white people I work with around in working with anti-racism, where the bind is so big when that awareness finally shows up around how much space we take up. And so it's okay in affinity groups, it's okay, but I'm coming back at you because I hear what you're saying and I so value what you're saying. And I value it partly because I'm in the process work and psychology activist circles and places that value that. And the bind is where I also feel it's true.
So I'm just going to go on, Errol.
It's such a complex thing to talk about, and I think something Lane and I taught in the class we taught earlier in the year was like that white fragility thing. If that shuts things down, if that makes your experience central, that's not supportive. But if it opens, if your feelings open something up, like Dr. Christine mentioned, that's relieving and healing. So I think saying all feelings are good or all feelings are bad is way too simplistic.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mhm.
what's the impact on the group, the
Mhm.
relationship of you expressing your feelings.
Mhm.
Is it relieving? Is it inflammatory?
Mhm.
Is it self-indulgent? Is it empathetic?
Mhm.
And to just paint all feelings as good or all as bad is way too simplistic.
Yes.
So what's the impact of us opening up on the people around us in our community? That's where our own self-awareness is important. To take the feedback from the group we're with, if it's a affinity group or a mixed race group.
Mhm.
And what I saw from when you were speaking, Carol, the group opened up, something shifted. Dr. Christine kind of confirmed that.
Mhm. Yeah, it's a dilemma because as a white person, it's very difficult to navigate when my racism might speak unbeknownst to myself and take up and hurt, and when it's not. And I think that awareness is what's keeping a lot of us down, and
Yes.
not in terms of activism, but in terms of sharing.
And it's going to hurt people, and then notice the hurt in the moment.
Hmm. You mean, will
And
they
speak.
notice, or does it? Yeah.
It's of course it's good. We're bound to hurt each other in a lack of awareness.
Yes, yes, we are.
And then notice the hurt and resolve the hurt. You got plenty of skills. We all have plenty of skills to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Diane, you keep leaning forward. Looks like you got something to say.
Go, Diane.
You're on mute, Diane.
I hear that, Carol. And so these opportunities are opportunities for us to come and put it on the table. It doesn't mean I'm not saying I'm right. What is right? There's no right, there's no shame, there's no blame. There's just, what in the world are we going to do? We are having we're in a big problem in all kinds of ways. And we've got to figure it out. And what I encourage white people to do is to really dig in there just start with your own families. You know, white people don't like that. You know, I don't mean you, I'm not talking particular, but you don't like to talk to your families. I don't have anybody white who comes to do something that isn't about talking to their own people, their family. I know that's a problem. So if you can't do that, then do something else. I'm not saying if you can't do that, don't do anything. There's a million things that can be done. But it's what Errol said and what other people said. Look at how carefully this system has been put in place. We're segregating. And all the things that Lane said before in the United States, we're segregated carefully and intentionally. And we may think that's good, but I'll tell you, white folks, you're missing a lot of power and authority from the Black community because of our experience. We have that. And you miss out on being able to participate and grow from that and learn from that because you're segregated.
That's right.
So everything we're saying, there's nobody that's right, nobody that's wrong. We're just putting it on the table so we can see what can we do.
Thank you, Diane. I hear that voice. Thank you for calling us in on that in big and ways and questioning ways. Yeah. Yeah. And I want you to know there are a lot of white people who are, and there are a lot of white people who still aren't. So I'm with you.
That's great. And if, it's just an if we believe one of the ways forward from what Diane's talking about is our shared humanity and our shared sense of feeling, then the system of white supremacy is going to say, don't feel. If you don't feel, I stay intact. I'm not saying feel in a self-indulgent way or a fragile way. If you don't do what Heike and Carol just did as white folks, I perpetuate myself as the white supremacy system. So we actually letting the system win. By getting stuck in this thing, how much do I share? How much do I feel? How much do I share about what I feel? Again, I'm going to clarify, it's not about being self-indulgent, it's about opening up the group, opening up the conversation, as Diane's saying.
Can I frame something?
Yeah, please.
Because we're getting close to time.
Jesus.
But I just want to remember together that one of the first things that happened when we started talking together was I turned off the screen share of my stuff about the vicious cycle. Errol invited people to talk about their feelings. And Francine said, you're concerned with the feelings of the audience, but how are you feeling about this, Lane? And so this has been a thread that has been running through our entire conversation from even before the conversation started. That was just a question in the chat before our conversation started, and it's where we are now here. And this is not to say that when you try to do this in other spaces, you won't be blamed. You will be. You won't have shame. You may. But what do we do after that? How do we have the resilience to stay there, to be in it anyway, to say, oh, okay, I hear what you're saying. And I feel my own shame, but am I going to feel my own shame now? Or am I going to hear the strength with which you're telling me that you don't want to hear my voice as your expression of what my voice does to you? And I'm going to honor that because I have the resilience, and I'm going to hold that as sacred, that feedback that you are giving me. Not that it's going to make me stop trying again. That's at least where I've come to in working with this bind, and it's not, and I know you don't just freeze, and I know you don't, right? But I get, yeah. Anyway, so this is somehow a thread that's been going through that whole thing. When the black folks were speaking at the beginning, Diane came in and said, "Fuck this." Enough of that. What do the white people have to say about this? What are you feeling about this? And then other people are going to disagree. Antoine. And we're going to have to wrap up soon, but it would be great to hear you, sir.
I just wanted to, Errol or Elaine, someone, my last question I put inside the chat, because when we talk about truly changing things over the next generations, it's what's written is what goes on to the next generation. So that my question is in chat. Errol, maybe.
What was the question? Can you, I didn't say it in chat, Antoine. Sorry. What was the question?
Okay. I said, will the true history and effects of white supremacy ever be written and taught in the education system and in our households to educate the next generation?
Wow.
Everything we talked about tonight, the things that we're talking about today, I've never seen inside actual education books, K through 12, college, unless somebody else wrote the book, but the education system, as well as my own household. These words, even for my Black friends and stuff, still haven't been heard. And then even my white friends, still the households.
Such a deep question, Antoine. I'm going to give you my opinion. The fact that it doesn't get taught is white supremacy in itself.
Mm.
The system perpetuates itself by keeping people unaware of the stuff Lane was talking about.
Yep.
So it's like a chicken or the egg, right? We have to educate people, like what you're saying, Antoine. But we also have to address white supremacy at its core so these things can be taught. Because while white supremacy is still rampant, what you're saying will never happen. Because white supremacy will deny its existence, will deny the very things we've spoken about and felt about today. What keeps white supremacy intact is denial in part. But what are your thoughts, Antoine? I'd love to hear your thoughts about this.
Well, I agree. As you know, I know Diane knows stuff, and Frank. I work with numerous organizations, NWSP, Urban Leagues, DEI, or United Way, and definitely we have talks, we have conversations, these events right here, but still at the core, I don't see people fighting to put it in the books, fighting to actually educate K through 12. You know, we are just getting to the point of having, books with other cultures to face our, in them, but still not saying the things that have happened in history. History is history, and it is true. But why do I have to hear from stories and other people and other things, and not in my actual history books, and not even from my actual political people who are supposed to be the leaders in my community, who are putting policies, police, putting those things in place and saying the truth and agreeing with the truth and understanding that we have been oppressed. Okay, so how do we change that so it doesn't become another part of the system?
That's great. That's great, Antoine. Certainly as a non-American, I can't believe what's not included in your history. Now, how can they teach American history and not include the stuff you're talking about? It makes people feel uncomfortable.
Can I jump in there?
Sorry?
Can I jump in there?
Please, send Beata.
I was going to jump in there.
Well, you jump in there, my dukes.
Pertaining to what Antoine mentioned, all of the recent focus on critical race theory. They are misinterpreting what is intended to do. The 1619 project is being challenged. I have it too. I bought it too. But libraries are being looked at. Some parents don't want certain books being in the library. They want to they want to know what both the teachers are going to be teaching in the schools. And let me just mention that I'm speaking from Mississippi, but I know Mississippi not the only state where all of this is happening. So it is going to take a big effort to get a lot of our information out, and the parents need to do it at home, and communities need to be doing it wherever possible, community centers, churches. And I mean, that's how I'm a baby boomer. That's how we learned a lot of stuff, but and the churches.
Thank you, Annie. Just one thing I would say as a non-American, I would say critical race theory isn't being misinterpreted. It's been intentionally shaped in a way that's unpalatable to the masses. It's been framed in a way which the masses are going to reject. So nobody wakes up to what's actually happening. There's intentionality behind the system of white supremacy. A very efficient system, as we all know. Sundiata, did you want to say something before we wrap things up?
Sure, yeah. Brother made a point about history and it being taught in the books and actually documenting certain things that happen. And to that I would say, as a former teacher, well, I'm still a teacher, but somebody who's been doing it a long time, I've been looking for that in those books a long time. And for too many days, I had to teach the kids this thing out of the book and then tell them, all right, that's what you're going to put on your test. Now, this is what really happened. And I had to do that for years. And I probably wasn't supposed to be doing that. Probably would have lost my job if they found out I was doing it. And that was because the truth has been so well hidden from us. There's reasoning behind all of that, though. And that's because we're talking about indigeneity. You know what I mean? Especially when you're talking about the history of our people in America, as well as Britain, as well as, different places around the world. The Aboriginal people's history has been changed so that those who encroached upon the land and took it would be able to keep it without anybody making any proper claim to it. If you thought you were brought from somewhere else, you have no claim to the land you're in. So I just think, in a broad sense, history is, we're gonna have to speak to Antoine. I don't think we can go, like Malcolm said, you can't take your crime to the criminal. You know what I mean? You can't go back to those people who are inflicting this miseducation and expect them to change it. So we would have to do that within ourselves, and that would be a more focused thing that we're gonna have to take under our own, you know what I mean? It's just like our own responsibility to teach ourselves. Other people do it. They send their kids to the public schools sometimes, but then they also have their own schools that they go to, mosques and synagogues and, different types. So we have to learn from others and move forward like that.
Thanks, Cindy. I just saw what Dr. Christine put in the chat. I will read it out if it's okay with Dr. Christine. Is that okay, Dr. Christine? I read it out.
Yes, I'm here. Thank you. First, I just want to say thank you very much for this very thoughtful presentation and all of the feedback and all of the suggestions. But I think we have to put something in action. It's good to have this dialogue because it's necessary. But as I was listening to Miss Annie, and she talked about being in Mississippi, it dawned on me today. That's a state right now where they can't even drink water. That goes all the way back to the 60s, the 50s, where they knew that this was going to happen. and all of the impoverished communities in Mississippi where the children couldn't drink water and the elderly people and the sick people, they couldn't hydrate. They didn't have anything to drink. There's conditions that have been presented to so many populations of Black and brown people that have got to be addressed. And we got to be very intentional about it. We have to be very comprehensive about it. And I was just sitting here thinking how this presentation tonight, this session is my very third conversation today with a group of people. I have had this conversation in 3 different settings with 3 separate groups of people, one on a board that I sit on, one at a radio station where I host a show, and here tonight. So it's permeating the entire atmosphere. There's no question that we are dealing with a vicious cycle. That couldn't be a better title for this presentation, a vicious cycle of white supremacy. There's no question about that. But I think the other question is, how do we manipulate it? And I know we all have to get off here tonight, but maybe I can just leave these with you guys and we can all think about it. And certainly this will not be our last time talking, I'm sure of it. But what do we do now to stop this cycle? Because cycles are stopped. They're created, repeated, and they're destroyed. So how do we stop it? And what do we do? And my final statement is, I don't think there's anything theoretical about CRT because it's all based on facts. And if it were a true theory, they wouldn't be trying to fight to keep it out these curriculums. Here in Georgia, it's called divisive thinking curriculum. That's the best that they could do. So our governor has kept it out. And if anybody gets caught talking about it, they lose their jobs or things like that. But it's not a theory. It's all fact. There's no fiction to it. And that is the secret behind why they don't want it out there. But we already know that. So I want to thank you guys for your time and all the feedback. And Antoine, thank you for posting the Eventbrite in the chat. I'm going to definitely be in that tomorrow, God be willing. And let's just all be intentional in our thoughts and our actions and how we interact with each other and other people, and think about what we can do to make our conditions for everybody better.
Thank you so much, Dr. Christine.
Put your radio show in the chat so we can learn more from you, and look forward to seeing you again. Diane, I think you wanted to say something.
Yes, we're at the end, and I wanted to thank everybody for coming. I have to say though, with Dr. Christine, what she said last, when she said, "What do we do about it?" And I just know, and I'm thinking about this recently, that we can't fix something using the same methods and words that created it. And then to even go back further, you can't put new wine in old kegs. So that means this whole thing has to come down. And so let's I think the thing to do is to set intentions for how we can, what we can do to move things along. Other than that, if anybody has any solid suggestions, put it in the chat or send it to the Racial Justice Collaborative so that we can keep this moving. I want to, again, I'm thanking everybody. I want to bring Frank Eason. He's going to do an announcement for our next program. And thank you, everybody, again.
Yeah, I just want to dovetail on that. Thank you, everybody, for coming and sharing your thoughts and experiences. Again, we can't do it without you. If 30 people came out here and no one said a word, it'd be very boring. So I'm very thankful that you all come out and you share your experiences and pour your heart into this, because it really means a lot. Just to let you know, we're working on our newsletter, and we have everybody's email, because when you register, we have your email. So you will all get that. It's our last event is November 12th. We don't have a title and it's not on Eventbrite just yet, but that'll be on the newsletter, and you'll be able to get tickets on Eventbrite, which is where we do everything. And again, thank you all for coming.
Thank you. Lane, Errol, do you have anything?
Thanks, everyone. Lane, do you want
Super appreciating that
to?
just
And just sorry, thanks people who shared. Thanks people who just sat there and held the space, even if you didn't say anything. That's a really important role in the whole process too. So if you didn't say a word for the whole thing, thank you for being here and holding and listening and loving us all through the process. That's really critical as well. So nice to be with you all today.
Thank you.
Night, morning.
Is there any chance of getting the theory that you guys gave in the beginning at all?
what do you mean getting the theory?
Do you have it written down somewhere? It was some really clear, both of you were very clear in that breakdown.
The videos, we're going to make the video available.
Okay, this one.
RJC is going to make this video available. I think we missed the
Theory.
the beginning. We missed the beginning of Errol's
Oh.
theory there.
Okay.
But most of it's there, so it should be in the recording.
Yeah.
Okay. Are you recording all of our interactions as well? or not?
Everything's recorded. We're still recording.
Well, I'm just curious if you have permission from all of us to share.
If anybody doesn't want to share something, let me know, and I will not put it out for anybody.
Well, we always put that's at the beginning of the meeting. We try to let people know that it's going to be recorded.
Yep.
Right, but it's one thing to record the early theory and then the group.
If anybody, Carol, if anybody doesn't want to have it out, let me know, and we just won't put it out at all.
Okay.
Okay. So, Jordana's putting something that I just want to bring it to everybody's attention, and she says, "What can we do?" That's the topic. We talk about needing to do something, but what can we do? So if you have any suggestions, send those again to the Racial Justice Collaborative. And then what can we do as a topic for an event? So
can I just mention this quote that I was looking for earlier? This is from the Reverend Angel Kyoto Williams, who's a Black mixed race woman who's a Zen monk and an author devoted to love, justice, and real well-being. And she writes, "Love and justice are not two. Without inner change, there can be no change. Without collective change, no change matters."
right. Thank you. Thank you, Susie. Bye, everybody.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Dr.
everyone. Nice to
Thank
see you all.
DL, Francine,
Great weekend.
Brianna, good to see you.
Bye, Errol.
Mary,
Good to see you.
Antoine,
20
Bye,
years.
everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye,
Bye,
Carol.
everybody.
Tom,
Thanks, Diane.
Bye,
Annie,
Lane. Bye, everybody.
Frank, Heike,
Bye,
Carol,
everyone.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Sundiata.
You guys later.
See you soon, Diana. Lovely to meet you.
Oh yeah, it was a pleasure. I enjoyed it.
All right, friends. Good work,
Do you want
Errol.
to stop recording, Lane?
Oh, good point. Damn. How do I do that? I gotta make my thing bigger. Give me a second.
The square button.
There we go. Got it.
Do you want to do
Got it. I did the stop recording, but it's still recording.